I was just 40 years old when they dragged me into the darkness of that basement. And what happened in those 72 hours would either break me completely or reveal a truth so powerful that even torture couldn't destroy it. My name is Mohammed, and this is how I lost everything I knew, only to find the one thing worth dying for. Before I begin sharing what happened to me, I want to ask you something personal. Where are you watching this from right now? Please leave a comment below telling me your city or country. Whether you're in America, Europe, Africa, Asia, or anywhere else in this world, we are family now. We need to pray for each other. We need to stand together. So please don't just watch and leave. Let me know you're there. Let us connect as brothers and sisters in Christ. Because the story I'm about to tell you reminds us why our prayers for the persecuted church matter so much now. Let me take you back to where it all began. I was born in 1985 in Khartoum, Sudan. My father was an imam at one of the largest mosques in the city. From the time I could walk, my life was decided for me. I would follow in his footsteps. I would serve Allah. I would memorize the Quran. I would lead prayers. I would never question anything. My childhood was strict. Every morning before sunrise, my father would wake me for prayers. He would test me on verses I had memorized the night before. If I forgot even one word, he would make me repeat it 100 times while kneeling on the hard floor. He told me this was love. He said he was preparing me for paradise. I believed him that by the time I turned 20, I had memorized large portions of the Quran. I knew the prayers by heart. I fasted during Ramadan without my God. I did everything a good Muslim son should do. And yet, deep inside, there was always this emptiness. I never spoke about it. I pushed it down. I told myself it would go away if I just prayed harder. When I was 20, I married a woman. Our family surrendered me. She was quiet, obedient, and came from a respected family. We had 3 children together, 2 sons and a daughter. I provided for them. I took them to the mosque. I taught them the same things my father taught me. But the emptiness never left. Years passed. I became more involved in the mosque. I started leading Friday prayers when my father grew old. People respected me. They called me Sheikh Mohammed. They came to me with questions about faith, about marriage, about life. I gave them answers from the Quran. I spoke with confidence. But inside, I was dying. Then, in 2023, something happened that changed the direction of my entire life. One afternoon, a man came to the mosque. He was a stranger, not from our neighborhood. He looked tired, like he had been traveling for days. He asked if he could rest for a while. I brought him water and some dates. We sat together in the courtyard. He thanked me for my kindness. Then he said something I will never forget. He told me that he used to be like me. He said he used to lead prayers, memorize verses, and follow all the rules. But then he met someone who changed everything. I asked him who this person was. He smiled gently and said it was Jesus. My heart jumped. I felt anger rise up in my chest. I wanted to tell him to leave immediately. But something stopped me. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was that emptiness calling out for something real. He didn't push. He didn't argue. He simply told me his story. He said that one night, while he was praying, he saw a man in white standing in his room. The man didn't speak at first. He just looked at him with eyes full of love. Then he said one sentence. He told him that he was the way, the truth, and the life. The stranger said he woke up trembling. He didn't understand what had happened. But from that night on, he couldn't stop thinking about Jesus. He started reading about him in secret. And slowly, everything he thought he knew began to fall apart. Before he left the mosque that day, he handed me a small book wrapped in cloth. He told me to read it when I was alone. Then he disappeared into the crowded streets. That night, after my family went to sleep, I unwrapped the cloth. Inside was a Bible, translated into Arabic. My hands shook as I held it. I knew this was forbidden. I knew that even having this book in my house could bring serious trouble. But I couldn't stop myself. I opened it. I started reading the book of John. I read about how Jesus healed the sick, forgave sinners, and loved people that society rejected. I read about how he said he was the light of the world. I read about how he died on a cross and rose again 3 days later. I didn't understand all of it, but something about the words felt alive. It wasn't just history. It felt like someone was speaking directly to me. Over the next few weeks, I kept reading in secret. Late at night, when everyone was asleep, I would sit in the bathroom with a flashlight and turn the pages carefully. I read about grace, about forgiveness, about a God who loved people not because they were perfect, but simply because they were His children. This was completely different from everything I had been taught. I started having dreams. In one dream, I was standing in a desert. The sun was burning hot, and I was dying of thirst. I fell to my knees, begging for water. Then I saw a man walking toward me. He was carrying a jar. He knelt down beside me and poured water over my head. The water was cool and clean. I felt life come back into my body. When I looked up to thank him, I saw his face. It was the same face from the stranger's story. It was Jesus. I woke up with tears on my face. I didn't tell anyone about the dreams. I didn't tell anyone about the Bible. But something inside me was changing. I couldn't ignore it anymore. Then one Friday, while I was leading prayers at the mosque, I made a mistake. I was reciting a verse from the Quran, and suddenly my mind went blank. I couldn't remember the next line. I stood there in silence, frozen, while hundreds of men waited behind me. My father was sitting in the front row. I could feel his eyes burning into me. I tried to continue, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, a different sentence came into my mind, a sentence I had read in the Bible the night before. Jesus said that He was the resurrection and the life, and whoever believed in Him would never die. I didn't say it out loud, but the thought was so loud in my head that I felt like everyone could hear it. After prayers, my father pulled me aside. He asked me what was wrong. He said I seemed distracted. He told me I needed to be more focused, more disciplined. I nodded and apologized. But I knew something had broken inside me. A few days later, I made a decision. I decided I needed to know the truth. I couldn't keep living in confusion. So I did something dangerous. I went online and searched for testimonies of people who had left Islam and followed Jesus. I found hundreds of videos. People from Egypt, from Pakistan, from Iran, from Saudi Arabia. They all told similar stories. They talked about dreams, about visions, about encountering Jesus in ways they couldn't explain. They talked about the peace they found, the freedom, the love. I watched video after video, and with each one, my heart became more certain. One night, I knelt down in my room, not facing Mecca, but just kneeling before God. I didn't know exactly what to say, so I just spoke from my heart. I told Him I was tired of pretending. I told Him I was tired of emptiness. I told Him I wanted to know the truth, no matter what it cost me. Then I said the name, Jesus. The moment I said it, I felt something shift. The room became very still. I felt a presence, warm and peaceful, wrap around me like a blanket. I started crying, not out of sadness, but out of relief. For the first time in my life, I felt known. I felt loved. I felt free. I didn't hear a voice. I didn't see a vision, but I knew something had changed. I knew I had crossed a line I could never uncross. From that night on, I couldn't go back. I kept going to the mosque. I kept leading prayers. But inside, I was no longer a Muslim. I was a follower of Jesus. I was living two lives, and I knew it couldn't last forever. A few months later, my wife found the Bible. She was cleaning our room when she discovered it hidden under a pile of clothes in the closet. She confronted me immediately. Her face was pale with fear. She asked me where I got it. She asked me why I had it. She asked me if I had lost my mind. I tried to calm her down. I told her I was just studying, just learning. But she didn't believe me. She told me I was putting our entire family in danger. She told me people had been killed for less. Then she said something that crushed me. She told me that if I didn't get rid of the Bible and return to Islam, she would tell my father. I begged her not to. I tried to explain what I had experienced, what I had seen in my dreams, what I had felt when I prayed to Jesus, but she covered her ears. She said she didn't want to hear it. She said I was being deceived by Satan. The next day, she told my father everything. Jesus was real. He came to my house that evening with two other men from the mosque. They didn't knock. They just walked in. My father's face was hard, like stone. He looked at me the way you would look at a stranger, not a son. He asked me if what Fatima said was true. He asked me if I had rejected Islam. I didn't answer right away. My mind was racing. I knew that if I said yes, everything would fall apart. But I also knew I couldn't lie anymore. So I told him the truth. I told him I believed in Jesus. The room went completely silent. Then my father did something I never expected. He struck me across the face so hard that I fell to the ground. He told me I had brought shame to our family. He told me I had betrayed Allah. He told me I was no longer his son. The two men grabbed me by the arms and dragged me out of the house. My wife stood in the doorway, crying, but she didn't try to stop them. My children watched from the window, confused and terrified. They took me to a house on the edge of the city. It was old and abandoned. They threw me into the basement and locked the door. That basement became my prison. For the first 2 days, they left me alone. There was no light, no food, no water, just darkness and silence. I sat on the cold concrete floor and prayed. I prayed for strength. I prayed for my family. I prayed that Jesus would not let me go. On the 3rd day, my father came down with 3 other men. They brought a chair, ropes, and a bucket of water. They tied me to the chair so tightly that the ropes cut into my skin. Then my father stood in front of me and asked me one question. He asked me if I was ready to come back to Islam. I told him no. What happened next is difficult to talk about. Even now, they started with questions, trying to break me mentally. They asked me how I could reject the Quran. They asked me how I could turn my back on the Prophet. They quoted verses at me, shouted at me, called me a traitor and a fool. When I didn't change my answer, they moved to physical punishment. They poured the cold water over my head again and again until I couldn't breathe. They held my face in the bucket until my lungs burned and I thought I would drown. Then they pulled me up just before I passed out, only to do it again. Between each round, my father would ask me the same question. Are you ready to return? And every time, I said no. They beat me with their fists. They kicked me while I was tied to the chair. They burned me with cigarettes on my arms and chest. The pain was unbearable. My body screamed for mercy. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jesus. I saw his face, calm and peaceful. And I heard his voice telling me to hold on. This went on for 3 days. On the 3rd night, they brought something worse. They heated a metal rod over a fire until it glowed red. My father held it in front of my face and told me this was my last chance. He said that if I didn't renounce Jesus, they would use it. I looked at him, this man who had raised me, taught me, and loved me in his own way. And I told him I couldn't deny the truth. He pressed the rod against my side. The pain was like nothing I had ever felt. My whole body went rigid. I screamed until my voice gave out. The smell of burning flesh filled the room. I thought I was going to die, but I didn't. When they finally stopped, I was barely conscious. My body was broken. My skin was burned and bleeding, but my spirit was still intact. They left me there in the dark, alone, broken, but not defeated. I don't know how long I lay there. Hours, maybe days. Time stopped meaning anything. All I could do was whisper the name of Jesus over and over again. Then, in the middle of that darkness, something happened. A light appeared. It started small, just a soft glow in the corner of the basement. Then it grew brighter and brighter until the whole room was filled with it. I lifted my head, and I saw him. Jesus was standing in front of me. He didn't say anything at first. He just looked at me with eyes full of love and compassion. Then he knelt down beside me and placed his hand on my head. Immediately, the pain stopped. My body, which had been burning and aching, felt calm. I felt his peace wash over me like water. Then he spoke. He told me I was not alone. He told me I was his, and nothing could take me from him. He told me my suffering was not in vain, and that many would come to know him because of what I endured. Then he was gone, but the peace stayed. The next morning, someone opened the basement door. It wasn't my father. It was a neighbor, an older woman who had heard rumors about what was happening. She had come in secret to check on me. When she saw my condition, she gasped. She helped me to my feet and led me out of the house. She took me to a Christian family who lived in hiding on the outskirts of the city. They cared for my wounds. They gave me food and water. They prayed over me, and slowly my body began to heal. But my life in Sudan was over. The Christian family helped me contact an organization that assists persecuted believers. Within 2 months, I was on a plane to Egypt,